but also the Islam of these groups and of these kind of groups, they don't reject capitalism. The Islam currently strengthening in the Middle East does not reject capitalism. It does not reject neoliberalism. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, these countries have all the same systemic institutions in place that we have here. So capitalism and jihadi Islam are hand in hand. They're not opposing systems. They're not endangering each other. Cultural Islam would endanger capitalism. That's why capitalism has never been able to take root in the Middle East. It's always led to chaos and war. I'll leave that there. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify something you said earlier, which was that you feel, or that it is felt, I don't know how widely, that ISIL only targeting the cantons because they essentially they pose an ideological threat from within.
Yes.
I find that quite fascinating to the extent that is that because the idea of cantons is growing? Was that movement growing and becoming stronger, developing more interest in that region? I don't know how big those 3 cantons are. I just find, in terms of it not being strategic, practically, but ideologically, in the West is supposed to be a post-ideological age. I find that quite fascinating that these groups to be so threatening to their ideas. I'd quite like you to elaborate on that. Why is how has that become clear that ideological threat is felt by ISIS? How have they made it clear that it's an ideology?
One word answer could be enough for this. Women. One word answer. ISIS are attacking other areas. Obviously, they're trying to expand the Islamic State. So they're fighting with Arabs, in other Syria, Raqqa, in Tel Abyad, over in Iraq, in Rabia. They're attacking Turkmens because they're Shia and killing and massacring them as well. But everywhere they've gone, they've toppled the cities, the towns, within hours, within a few days. They couldn't do that in Kobane because people are fighting. 70-year-old men, 15-year-old women, 12-year-old children are all fighting. In the other areas, because society is not mobilized along these lines, they couldn't fight. If someone who is, let's say, conservative will not send their wife or their sister or whatever, to the front. They just wouldn't. They would go die, but then nobody would go after them. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a mindset, and this mindset, which, as I said, it's a fruit of the Kurdish movement. This resisting mindset. We will resist against all the odds. To our last bullet. People. I've heard of many stories, where they've used the last bullet on themselves not to be captured by ISIS. You've heard the story of Arin Mirkan, who, because ISIS were attacking with a tank and just, massacring people, she actually turned herself into a suicide bomber in order to blow up the tank. So it's this level of sacrifice which is going into it. But you could not do this just along nationalist lines. Do you know what I mean? A woman has to believe that she's going to have equality and freedom after the war in order to be able to sacrifice her life to that degree. And we're not talking about 1, 2, 3 people here. This is why ideology is so important and so threatening to ISIS. In the 4th edition of their magazine, they've got a magazine called Dabik. You can download it from the internet. In the 4th edition, they say the PKK is the biggest enemy of ISIS because they are secular, and because they will in the future be the biggest allies of the West, of the infidels, basically, because they are secular. And they say, it's almost like, trying to aggravate Kurds and trying to appeal to their feudal and patriarchal mindset. They're hiding behind their women, they're flimsy women fighters or something like that they use. So, whoever writes this, ISIS is, ideologues or whoever, their PR system, they're aware of what the PKK, the PYD, the YPG, the YPJ, what the threat is in the not just now, but obviously if it continues. Because, and let me give you an example in history. I don't know, any religion started off as a few people, right? Or any ideology started off with a group of people who believed in it, and it spread, right? If it was suitable, if it you know, maybe religions did it by using force in a lot of cases, but even then you can't uphold something by just force alone. You need to appeal to people's, not just their intellect, but their hearts. You need to appeal to people's metaphysical worlds, their emotions, you know. Forget everything else. I'm here in the middle of London talking to 50 people here about what's going on there, right? That's the power or the fire which warms me in order to be able to do all these things or say all these things or to believe in these things, to believe in a better world, to live as a better person, even though I'm like, you know, thousands of kilometers away. And I'm bringing the message to you guys because we have a common future. We have common aims, and that's what it is. You know, that's what ISIS and all other forms of oppressive systems are afraid of. They're afraid of it spreading, these ideas spreading, that unity, that people coming together. Speak up.
You say that you want to see democracy in all these areas, democratically, what is it, Syria, democratic Iraq, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So if the US doesn't, and I'm not saying they should, but if the US doesn't go through their plan of toppling Assad, how would you like to see democracy move into Syria, basically?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't know Syria as well as I know Turkey because I'm from, you know, the Turkish part. But any democracy will first obviously have to recognise the autonomous regions in the north, and also recognise, once they recognise that in their constitution, they will automatically have to recognise autonomy in general. So any other areas that would declare autonomy would automatically become legal in the central system. Well, I don't believe in, we call our way the third way, so neither the way of capitalists, you know, or their local dictators, their cronies. So I don't believe it's going to come with Assad, but I also am wary of whether it will come with the FSA. Now, there are progressive elements within Syrian society that are still living under Assad's rule in the south of the country, especially. And Assad, compared to a lot of others, is comparatively secular. Although he's a nationalist, he's a Ba'athist, you know, so he didn't recognise Kurdish rights for a long time. That is a much more long-term struggle which needs to find its path within the experience that we have in the next 10-15 years. So the war that we're waging now, the resistance that we're waging now, I know it's not going to end. You know, even if ISIS are defeated, it's going to continue against whichever power that replaces them or that doesn't recognise this autonomy. So yeah, so it needs to rise from within the people there. And there's loads of Arabs living in these cantons as well. A lot of the Arabs who fled Assad, who fled FSA, actually took refuge in Jazeera, in Afrin, in Kobane. Now they're in Turkey, so it's not just Kurds living there. I mean, the majority are Kurds, but there are Arabs living there. And those people, they could take those ideas with them when they go back to their own cities after the war. So.
Yeah, I just go back to what you said before. You're talking about after ISIS. Mm-hmm. What the people think after ISIS.
Yeah.
And it came across as if ISIS was the last stand, and once ISIS, whatever happens after ISIS, is going to be much bigger. It's almost as if that's been put into the equation to stop it now. And the people, like you said about the women in that area, they're so passionate and stuff like that it won't be defeated. And then we go into a much bigger thing globally because of the capitalism.
Yeah.
That's what I see how you coming across. Do you see it that way yourself?
Do you mean after ISIS?
After ISIS, yeah, because ISIS is not going to get defeated because of the passions of the people there. And
they're
stuff
going to be defeated.
They're going to be defeated.
Yeah.
They might be defeated in life, but they won't be defeated in ideological, is what I mean. That's always going to be there. It's the same as what we're doing here. It's the consciousness and it's moving forward. So, did you say it was from the Quran that they're saying it's after that? It was something around this.
Yeah. The Quran prophesies that after the ones with the black flags come, they will be defeated. The Quran says that ISIS will be defeated, or how ISIS are kind of presenting themselves. But after them, the Messiah will come back. Yeah.
There's no other option because that's their last show.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the struggle. I mean, you know, you can take this as maybe you know, the whole Trotskyist thing about perpetual revolution. We believe in perpetual revolution. We believe in the struggle constantly reaching higher forms of synthesis. You know, reaching higher forms of itself. So it's not, you know, we're basically at the beginning. Although the Kurds have been fighting for 40 years for what they've got now, we know that we need to install this in Turkey, we need to develop it in Turkey, we need to develop it in Iran, in Iraq, in Syria, and we need to enrich in it as well from within. Because a lot of the questions that we're asking ourselves now, a lot of the work that we're doing is about what could alternative forms of economy be, for example. You know, because it's not how it's written, like I said, it's not how it would be written in a book. You say, okay, so we're going to set up a commune here or a cooperative, you say, right? And there are ways that this has been done. There are experiences around the world. There are universal experiences in the way it's done, but you might have to do it a different way because the people there are different. Do you know what I mean? So it is a trial and error situation that we're facing. But whilst we're doing this, we're also facing an existential threat as well, because the Kurds still haven't determined their right to exist as a nation in the Middle East. We have no status. We're only recognized as an entity in northern Iraq. In Syria, in Iraq, in Turkey, and in Iran, we're still not recognized as an entity. The world doesn't recognize us. When I go somewhere, I go there as a Turkish person because that's my passport. You know, so we're still facing it. But we're saying you can't say we need to leave this